Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Standup. And this project that I have open right here is the front end for the engine system that we're working on. And basically, what I've been working on tonight is adding a consumer to read my notifications queue in RabbitMQ and then process the message. So this is what I've been working on, and I'll show you the error that I'm currently running into. But just to kind of trace everything together so you can see, this is the front end running. So when we actually make the simulator, this is what's going to be sending up the data as the engine runs. Obviously, you can see it's extremely rudimentary, but you can see that I'm going to have fields where I can input a lot of different variables and stuff like that. I don't know if I've actually showed this part on the channel yet, just because it looks ridiculous, but that's what it's going to be. And then the front is going to be other diagnostic readouts and everything like that. But if we go ahead and restart this, it's going to fire off a bunch of messages over to my Rust microservice. At least it should have. Did that fire? Hold on. I think it did. Let me open Rust. Yeah, so you can see I just read that. And then you can see that I have it sent message, engine overheating, shutdown executed. So it's doing it as we would expect. And then you'll see up above, we see a warning for engine overheating. So basically, I put some logic in from last time to check if the temperature is over a certain number. If it is, then we're going to say, okay, we're going to add it to this this vector, which is like, I guess in Rust, a variable size array. We don't have to predefine the space that it takes up. So we're going to push a temperature up to that. Trying to see where I defined it. You can see here, right there, a vector of type optional in 64, I64. Again, Rust is I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It's pretty decent learning curve, this language. But anyway, so if I push, I'm going to push the temperature up to that vector, and if the total number of elements in that vector or array, I'm just going to call it an array. If the total number of elements in the array is equal to 200, then we're going to send up a warning to my notifications RabbitMQ queue. And if we keep going, okay, it says engine overheating. But if we get up to 300, then we need to say, okay, our engine is overheating, and we need to shut down the engine before we cause damage. And that's basically the gist of what's going to happen. So this queue is going to be reading a ton of messages. You can see that we're parsing out the temperature as 600. It's over 500, so we're going to send up that engine overheating shutdown. And then I'm basically, when I'm doing that, I go ahead and actually clear the array, right? So I'm not keeping track of those messages, because if I retain those messages in the array or the vector, then I'll never see these notifications again, right? So these are going to this queue right here. So I have the notifications queue set up, and you can see that I have no unacknowledged messages, and I have none in ready status, because they've already been read by my front end. And I'll show you how I did that. So I registered a notifications consumer, and again, I'm using the mass transit library to connect to RabbitMQ. And so I registered my consumer of notifications, and this is where I'm trying to work through an error. So I have some issues here with the JSON deserialization. You can see that it's like it's getting the message. So it'll say, okay, W is an invalid start of the value, path, whatever. But W would correspond to this warning, engine overheating. And the way I know that is because that the next message you see is E. E is an invalid start of the value. E is the next part of this message here. So I know it's getting here for sure, and I know that it's reading the messages, because we should see a few of them come through, because I have more than two of those notifications coming through. So I believe that the message is actually there, right? Because the last one is E, so it's like it's getting the first byte of the string, and then it's erroring out. And then I tried to do some searching online, and I tried to override the consumer definition and provide it some configuration for the JSON deserialization, and also as well as the serialization, because so mass transit wraps a message in an envelope, and if you remember from a few videos back, that message envelope is actually what we were seeing come through on my Rust microservice, and you can see how I have to go into message and then temperature, and message is actually part of that envelope coming from mass transit. So mass transit puts a lot of basically metadata kind of associated with the messages, like source, I think, and some other stuff, and then it has a message block. Inside the message block is the actual data that you sent from whatever your producer is. In my case, it's the front end. But when I'm going from the reverse, right, from my Rust microservice back up to RabbitMQ, it's not going to put it in that message envelope because it's not using mass transit. It's just connecting directly to RabbitMQ, not through any particular wrapping library. So the problem I'm seeing is that I don't know how to deserialize that correctly. I've tried a few different types. We can try. I'll try to mess with it here. But if we try to make this like a byte array, which I thought it might be, because if we go to my Rust microservice, I'm sending the message as bytes. So if we make it an array of bytes, we are actually going to restart this, and we'll see probably the same message come through. Yeah, so it's like it's not getting the serialization correct. And if we just do like objects, if that even lets us do that, let's restart. Let's just play around with the types. Maybe it'll give us to object is the same thing. So it's very strange, and I'm trying to make sense of what's happening. I've tried looking up online, but something's happening because it's like mass transit is looking for that default message envelope. So you have to override, or basically create the custom definition providing these, telling it to use raw JSON. And I think I did that. And I've provided a default content type because I don't think it would have one coming from Rust. So I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. This is where I'm at now. But I know the message is getting here, so I know like that's fine. Like, and it's just not deserializing it correctly. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I had a bunch of stuff. Mass transit is kind of neat because you can just register that consumer in the middleware here. So add services mass transit, and then you just register it here. I also tried to register I tried to configure the JSON deserialization here, but then that messes up the data that's actually sent to RabbitMQ from mass transit. And then it breaks my Rust microservice because my Rust microservice is actually checking for that message. And I guess I could change that, and I could just send the raw JSON, which I might still do, but honestly, like, it's probably not high on my priority list to change that now. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and the reason I had to keep refreshing is just because I have it hard coded just on the index method, just to send up 600 messages to that to my RabbitMQ, just providing just general like information and stuff like that. So that's where the 600 comes from. It's here, and then that's why it's printing out 600 here. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and hopefully I'll figure it out tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, there's definitely, I don't want to say limited information, but I get a lot of I feel like I get a lot of uh, different ways to do this. And for me in particular, because I am using mass transit, but because I'm trying to interop between a few systems like Rust and then C Sharp, that's why it's having difficulties, right? If this was a C Sharp to C Sharp microservice, it would be not a problem at all, right? Because then you just make sure the namespace is the same, and then you basically copy and paste the model, and then you're good to go because you can leave it with the default serialization and deserialization. Because I'm coming from Rust, that's not going to have any of the message envelope. So, yeah. But that's kind of where I'm at. But this is a step in the right direction because now I have my Rust microservice at least up to a point where I'm performing logic and I'm sending a message back. Now I'm back at the C Sharp or the .NET area of this where it's actually going to be consuming that message. And then once I actually get it parsed correctly and make sure that my system can continue to run, behind the scenes, basically, then I need to configure the connection from the front end to the back end to have real time, just basically streaming of data. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet in terms of when the notification actually gets received by the consumer, where it's going to send it to. I might look into using a library like SignalR. That way I can basically just post a message back to the front end. But yeah, I'm not sure yet. Yeah, that's kind of the next thing I have to more or less figure out. So I worked on this earlier. I feel like I got to a decent spot. Hopefully I'm not just missing something obvious in this. But yeah, not sure. But once I get all this connected, front end to back end to RabbitMQ to Rust back to to RabbitMQ back down to my front end. I'm gonna write all that up hopefully into an article to kind of synthesize everything, all the moving parts, and kind of draw out a diagram in terms of how everything's orchestrated. And hopefully I want to write that up just for my own benefit, just to keep notes as to what's happening. But hopefully maybe it'll help somebody out, maybe if they're trying to do this, because it really is you can throw a lot of messages at this. So it seems to work pretty well from what I can tell. And I mean, it's just running on my Mac locally. So yeah, I don't know, but that's probably it for today. And yeah, I'll see everyone tomorrow.